Marvel was really particular. They wanted but they didn't just hand out the costume to anybody until the film came out, and then they wanted a Spider-Man in every Walmart.
Everywhere, right?
Every Walmart,
Yeah.
wanted Spider-Man. So it's like, okay. But the core guys that did it, in Chicago, New York, and LA, we would hand the costume back in, and go down and get submit our expense report and everything. And then, we'd get the costume next time we came out. Although I was able to borrow it for my wedding.
Okay. Whoa. That took a hard left turn, David.
I'll come back to that.
Okay, I'm going to write it down to make sure we come back. That was the voice of professional actor and superhero David Sitler. And yes, don't worry, I do indeed ask him about how his Spider-Man costume and his wedding weave together on this week's episode of the Page and Stage podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cannon. And thanks for coming back around after I had to miss last week due to the performances of clowns like me, which went awesome, by the way. Scotty and the show took a big step forward, and we are 1 week away from flying up to New York to start tech and previews for Off-Broadway. I will keep you updated, of course, and you can learn more over at clownslikeme.com. Some quick notes before I get to the interview with David today. First, if you are enjoying this show, I encourage you to do 2 things. First, tell even just one other person. Word of mouth has always been and will always be the best marketing tool in the world. And second, visit pageandstage.art. That's pageandstage.art and click support. You'll then be able to make a donation that helps to cover the cost of producing this podcast. I intentionally keep all the content free, no paywall, no subscription. Just deep dives into the art and craft of writing and performance with super cool guests. Speaking of which, my guest this week is David Sitler, an actor who has played everything from King Lear to RoboCop, and who has appeared everywhere from Broadway to Maine to Utah to Guam to India. He was also the best man at Spider-Man's wedding in Shea Stadium, no joke, and he is one of the few people who can claim to have choked Regis Philbin on live TV. We cover all of this in the next hour, so here we go with my conversation with David Sitler. I am sitting here with the prolific David Sitler. How many performances by this? 140 plays, I think I heard in a recent interview.
Yeah, it was probably when you count on showcases in New York, it's like 160.
Oh, so many credits.
But under equity contracts, it's close to 120.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's been a life in the theater.
I want to start with the fact that did I read this correctly? You have 6 brothers?
I do.
And where do you fit in the hierarchy?
Well, there's kind of an interesting story here. My dad died when I was very young. My mom was a 30-year-old woman with 5 boys.
Holy moly.
61.
Holy moly.
He marries an 18-year-old.
Whoa. Okay. All right. So you said there was a story here, David, but you buried the lead here. Your mom was 30.
Yeah.
Widowed. 5 boys.
Yeah.
From her first husband.
Yeah.
Marries an 18-year-old man who, what was he thinking?
Well, the funny story is his brother was the normal babysitter because my mom was back working.
Wow.
And his brother, my dad, Milton, babysat one day, and that's when they met.
Wow.
And then the joke is that when they went to a church Halloween party, mom was dressed as the devil. But it's kind of so they met. I mean, my grandparents had a dairy farm, actually. When my dad died, my grandfather said, come, we'll build a home on the farm. You can raise your voice here. And my mom's like, no, move close, but I'm going to raise my boys.
Yeah.
Which 30-year-old woman, amazing.
She sounds, yeah.
And she's 92 now. She'll be 92 this year. So she's still with us. And yeah, she's a force. But then met my dad. Not really my stepdad, is my dad. I was 4 years old. And
were you the youngest?
No, I'm middle. I was
of the 5, of the original 5.
I was 4.
You were 4th.
Yeah. And then they had 2 more boys. So
wow.
And we had these T-shirts growing up. It was a silkscreen silhouette that said 1 of 7. So that was fun. But my dad, I just finished basic training at Fort Bragg. He had either Christmas week off or New Year's week off. So they got married Christmas Eve. Literally the day after Christmas, got on a bus, went back to Fayetteville, And the plan was that because two of my brothers were in school, they were like, they'll finish school and then we'll move to North Carolina. By February, we had loaded the Biscayne and driven down, probably not without car seats.
Right. So being one of seven, as the T-shirts proclaimed.
Yes.
And being sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
Do you think that had anything to do with you getting into acting?
I think I do. They always say middle child's the mediator, user, whatever, But basically, all my brothers, still, we were allowed to pursue our interests. And when we moved from Fayetteville to Millersville, Pennsylvania, because my dad then got out of the Army, basically they said, "Do you want to re-up, sir? You're going to Southeast Asia." He said, "I have 6 boys at home." He said, "I'd sign the dotted line, sir." Went to Millersville. He got his industrial arts degree, taught high school shop.
Wow.
But we were all, because we were really close to the schools, if we wanted to do an after school activity, we did, And I was pretty much in doing sports, a little bit. I played football.
Wrestling.
Yeah. And then I did 1 year of track. But my freshman year, I wrestled. My sophomore year, I wrestled and did the musical. My junior and senior year, I jumped to the musical.
Okay. And what was the first musical? What was the one that flipped
Oklahoma.
you? Oklahoma.
But actually, you can go back even further. And I blame, my parents actually have a lot to do with this. And, 7 boys at home, 2nd grade.
I think I read this story somewhere about you. You played the front half of a cow.
And
unpack this story.
I came home, and not like came home and told them, but right before I went to bed, I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a cow tomorrow."
You gave your mom one night to make you a costume.
They made a cow mask. Okay. So, most parents would have said, "Well, good
tough luck." Yeah.
When we got 6 other brothers here to take care of. I woke up Saturday morning and the most incredible cow mask was there. They had taken a big paper bag and a small paper bag and ears and painted it, and I was the best front of the cow. But part of the reason I think too that I'm in theater is that it was a public school, but it was affiliated with Millersville State College.
Okay.
So it was what they called the lab school. So it was a public school, and when we got there, 2 of my brothers went to the other public school in town, Eshelman, and 2 or 3 of my brothers went to the lab school. And the lab school was like, I had Latin in 2nd grade. I couldn't tell you a word of it now.
Wow.
We had art class. We had music class. We did plays. We wrote plays. So it was really, they call it a lab school because, they were trying out new programs.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I learned long division in the back of the classroom. So in elementary school, 5th, 6th grade, we wrote a musical, we performed little things. And then, got to middle school, and then got to high school, and I was doing more of the athletics. And then I remember seeing a play, and they only did like a fall play and a spring musical. And I remember seeing the fall play and just being transported, and also that willing suspension of disbelief. In fact, it went a little further. When I was in the community pool one day, and I saw the actor who had the girlfriend in the play. And they were together in the pool. I said, "Oh, you actually are a couple." The guy dunked me and said, so I was like, but they brought back the musical my freshman year. And like I say, I did Oklahoma, and I would literally go to, I was in wrestling. So the day I had meets was the day I could go to rehearsals. And I remember my first rehearsal, and all the cowboys were coming in with Aunt Eller, with the wagon, and it's like, "Okay, everybody, we're just going to run in, and we're going to start the scene." And I'd never been on stage. So we had to do it a few times, and they're like, "No, David, just run in, just these are the lines on the stage, that is." And I remember there's a moment where Will Parker has come back with that kaleidoscope,
right,
which is actually the knife. And the cowboys are looking at it, and so one rehearsal, the director said, "Okay, everybody, when you look at it, give us a reaction." So I remember looking at it and going, "Goop, goop, goop, goop." And I thought, I can't say God, so that's why I went Gomer Pyle. Go! Hey! And the director goes, oh, it's like, wow, that's it. I need that's react. That's it. And that became a yearbook picture.
And you learned that the art of imitation.
Uh, yeah.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
you on your resume claim to do a world-class Walter Brennan.
Yeah, you read it. Like, you Walter Brennan. There was an album that we listened to, and it was Walter Brennan back home. And it was all these really nice homespun stories about Christmas. And I listened to that all the time.
Clearly. Oh my God.
This is once where they said, okay, actually, what we're really looking for, sometimes in special skills you'll add something like that.
Something silly, something that'll catch their attention. Yeah.
I also web slinger on there,
Yep.
But so they said we're really thinking Walter Brennan might be good for this.
Oh my gosh.
Walter Brennan. And I go, well, it's actually sort of more the older Walter. Oh, that's fine. And I did it, and they laughed. Didn't get cast, but they.
But they'll never forget it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Your web slinger. I was going to ask about this because there was a time early in your career, and I love this, where you played Spider-Man, you played Robocop, and it wasn't necessarily in a scripted narrative play. Were you doing drug or anti-bullying? Tell me about playing Spider-Man and superheroes and Robocop and going to schools, because I find it's so powerful. It's such a specific form of storytelling. I toured to schools for 3 years too, so I get it. Yeah. But talk about the mindset of I'm an actor. Yeah. I'm putting on a Spider-Man or Robocop outfit and going into a school, not a theater.
No, yeah.
But a school, and trying to impart
convention centers. I mean, I was actually doing summer stock, and there was a guy who had worked for Marvel Comics. And so I knew of the job. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to the city in 83, I got there and there was an ad backstage. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to get out and meet him. And I went down and, they were hiring actors to play Spider-Man. And at that point, they really only had actors in LA and New York and in Chicago. And then, so we had a nice interview with Barb Mayer, the person who hired me. And she was like, okay, now we're going to have you put on the costume. And at that time, Marvel Comics was the place. They had the bullpen, which is where the comics got created. The writers, the inkers, all the storytelling. It was just this beehive of activity. And so they said, go up to go up and, be Spider-Man. And you walk around and they were like, okay, you can come down. And I was like, well, I'm having a good time. It's like, okay, stay longer, And then initially it was like, store openings and things like that. But then, and I did it for like 30 years. Traveled around the world. It became my day job.
Wow.
I mean, initially it was kind of like weekend work and it was a supplement. But then we really sort of got into it, and they started doing programs with the NCPCA, which is the National Council for the Prevention of Child Abuse.
Oh,
and
man.
We did a scripted program, but basically Marvel came out with a comic where Peter Parker revealed that he was abused by a chick.
Wow.
Boy. And how hard it was for him to tell Aunt May and Uncle Ben about this. And my friend Jeremy, who did it first, was picketed at the airport. It was like, Spider-Man, go home. You don't need to come here.
Because it was an abuse story.
Yeah. And so he, and what he told me he discovered, because we were going sometimes in the hospital situations, where kids were. And what Jeremy kind of did, and then I incorporated as well, was after we told our story, this was when we could still do it. That took a little bit away from us. They didn't want the physical contact.
Of course.
We used to be able to give a kid a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And we still can. It was like, do you want a handshake or do you want a hug?
Mm-hmm. Fist bump, whatever.
But there were a lot of issues that later happened. So they said no. But this was a time when Spider-Man would hug the kids after telling this story. And what he discovered was the kids were hugging him harder.
Wow.
Than he was hugging them, because he had just told his story.
Yeah.
And that night the doctor said, like maybe a kid started talking for the first time, And we would also go into military bases, shopping malls. And this woman came up to me and just said, I wish Spider-Man had been around when I was a kid. My life would have been very different. I mean, Spider-Man's credo is with great powers comes great responsibility. And that was something, there were core guys that did that program, and we took it very seriously. And when you did an appearance and you were signing autographs and shaking hands and taking photos, it was a great day. but when you could add a message to it,
Yeah.
and maybe change a kid's life.
Yeah.
I mean, I also went to Guam. I spoke to about 10,000 kids there.
As Spider-Man.
As Spiderman, yeah, the Guam government brought me over. Like I was in Wisconsin for a week. They brought me over there, but all around the country. I was in Houston in a shopping mall, Army bases down in DC, and we did that for like after the comic book came out. We did it for quite a few years, and then they added other programs, bullying,
Yeah.
cyberbullying, leadership,
Mm-hmm.
reading is fun. Got to do some pretty kind of high profile things, as Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man. That's what's amazing is to get into the real storytelling angle of this, David, is that even though it's not on stage, you're wearing this mask.
Oh yeah.
And there is freedom both for you and for the kid or the observer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the Mr. Rogers magic of the puppet, right? You will tell a puppet something you'd never tell a human. You'll tell Spider-Man something you would never tell your
We
mom.
always had professionals there.
Of course. I was going to ask that. Of course, there's
because I
and by professional therapists or doctors.
Anybody, but it was like my thing was whenever I would do a program, even if it was 10,000, 1,000 kids at a time, I wanted to have a little handshake time with them,
Mm-hmm.
just because otherwise it's a talking head.
Yeah, exactly.
But and so I would always build in time to do that. If we went over, but that was just something that, and I think most of the guys did that, But talking about that, I remember I was in a Toys R Us, and they were like, it was one of those jobs where they had like Elmo and and
Yeah.
all kinds of guys.
Yep.
I mean, Marvel was really particular. They wanted they didn't just hand out the costume to anybody until the film came out, and then they wanted a Spider-Man every Walmart.
Everywhere, right?
Every Walmart
Yeah.
wanted a Spider-Man. So it was like, okay. But the core guys that did it, in Chicago, New York, and LA, we would hand the costume back in, and go down and get our, submit our expense report and everything. And then, we'd get the costume next time it came out. Although I was able to borrow it for my wedding.
Okay. Whoa. That took a hard left turn, David.
I'll come back to that.
Okay, I'm going to write it down to make sure we come back.
Because I'm in this Toys R Us, and I'm there in this line of, all these superheroes and different costume characters and of every ilk and size. And after a while, the line kind of breaks up. So I just start moving the store.
Yeah.
And I remember this one kid in particular, he was just like so effusive, like Spider-Man, and I came around the corner and he was with his mom and dad, and he freaks. Because I remember like, hey, Bobby, hey, do you remember we saw each other in the front, because I always get down on their level.
Yes.
And and by the end of the day, it's like, oh, get
Your knees, right?
and his response was, but you're real. You're really real.
Wow.
When you were, in that lineup of all the other characters.
Oh my goodness. How interesting is that?
Out in his world, walking the aisles of the store. So that was pretty cool. But a friend of mine actually did a one-man show, and part of it, who also did Spider-Man, and part of it was what he did was he held up the costume, which is basically just like and he said, this is, something I do. And he said, right now it's nothing, but when I put it on, that's when it comes to life.
Mm-hmm.
And he went off stage and came out and, we're doing our, thing and everything else. Yeah. And until the film came out, there was no, as far as what the voice sounds like, or anything like that, And what we would say is, well, Tobey Maguire's an actor playing Spider.
Throwing some shade back at the movie.
But
it was like Santa. It becomes like Santa Claus. It becomes like
a little bit. When we're in the costume, that's who we are.
Yeah.
It's like,
Let's talk about that for a sec. When you put that costume on, David,
yeah,
and you pull the mask, and it's your head, it's your faith. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a full body.
Yeah, you saw the photo.
Yeah, I did see a photo. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's doesn't hide a thing.
Yeah.
Unless you guys are like, well, maybe I can't do that soon, but I could still do it.
I think you can still put. I mean, you said 30 years. I mean, you could.
Yeah.
But when you put that costume on,
yeah,
it's hard for listeners to see it. But when you were talking about getting out, your body is automatically kind of taking shapes. And I'm curious into the web slinging hands. And when you put that costume on, was there a rehearsal period at Marvel where they taught you how to move or how to talk, or was it like when you were walking around Toys R Us and this kid saw you? I mean, you weren't just strolling? Were you
No.
like jumping around the sides? Were you hanging from the ceiling? Like, what were you?
Surreptitiously. I mean, actually, the first job was really your audition.
Oh,
When I got
okay.
hired. I mean, I'd walk around in the costume, and then and I remember my first job. It was July 4th, 1984, and it was actually not far from where my parents lived in Pennsylvania. It was in York, Pennsylvania. It was a Hills department store, and that was my trial under fire. I
Wow.
was climbing on registers. You always try to get levels. When I was in Guam, I'd go up here on the rooftop of
Mm-hmm.
the school,
Mm-hmm.
riding on top of a police car. Actually, when I was in India, they brought me in because they were coming out with a Spider-Man based in India, an Indian Spider-Man.
Okay.
And it was a real quick fly in, fly out with the head of Marvel. And we were going to an elementary school, and I rode it on the top of the police car into the schoolyard, these kids.
Man.
And I'm in this gym, and this kid's there in a Spider-Man outfit, and there's a rope there, and he climbs it with his toes. And I was like,
I could do that. I just don't feel like it.
I don't like to flaunt my powers.
Right.
It's like, because they were like, why don't you shoot us a web and fly around? And I was, well, or they actually did give us some stock answers to questions.
Oh, of course.
And we were always up on the current comic books. We got those mailed free, which was great. I got a huge box of comics that I don't.
Vintage, yeah.
Yeah, we were still. And actually, when Spider-Man got married, speaking of which, I was Captain America that day. I was the best man. And they hired a model to play Mary Jane. And
Wait, this was a public. Oh, you don't mean in the comic? You mean there was a public Spider-Man wedding?
They had a comic, but they had a public wedding at Shea Stadium.
Oh,
I actually happened to be Dwight Gooden's first game back after drug rehab, and we were all in the dugout area, and we came out to home plate, and Green Goblin was there, and Spider-Man, and he came riding in a limo across, and 50,000 people in the stands. Stan Lee officiated. Speaking of which, Stan Lee is Peter Parker. I mean, he is the nicest man, and you know exactly where Peter Parker came from.
Yeah.
Through him, and he was always just so friendly to all the guys that did. He loved it. We lots of photo ops, with him, and he officiated the wedding with this ring ID web.
Oh no! Oh my goodness!
And they had the reception was at the Tunnel, which happened to be the hottest nightclub at the time. So we're there. I'm a Captain America with my shield in the back, on the dance floor. And Spider-Man told me he and Mary Jane did have a little.
They got married.
But actually, they were doing a press conference before, and People Magazine asked, "Well, Mary Jane, now that you'll be marrying Spider-Man, will you be having any affairs with any other superheroes possibly?" And she gave the perfect Mary Jane answer. She was like, "I don't think so, because once you've had web, you never go."
Oh no! Oh my goodness!
And that's People Magazine.
Okay, since we're talking Spider-Man weddings, going back to you said you borrowed Spider-Man outfit for your wedding.
Photo with my wife Carolyn, and I missed it. I missed it. I have the photo. He must have come when I was upstairs or something. I don't know, but I have a photo with Carolyn in Spider-Man's arms.
That's fantastic.
That was fun. Yeah.
David, so you've talked about being a wrestler, and I know you're a marathoner.
Yeah.
Because I just did mine for the first time last year. We had a little exchange about that, and so I know you're a runner.
In fact, a side note, I actually wore one year from the marathon was the year I got married, and so I wore the T-shirt from Spider-Man's wedding, and people were like, "Your wedding, So that's great. That was very.
And I mean, and playing Captain America or Spider-Man, I mean, I think requires a certain athletic mindset. And I saw a video of you when you were at New Jersey Rep doing Butler, and you were doing your push-ups and your vocal and physical warm-ups.
Yeah.
So my question is, in terms of, you were even wrestling when you first got into Oklahoma. So I'm wondering if athlete brain and actor brain have points of intersection for you. Do you approach acting as an athletic event?
That's a great question.
I would love for you to just unpack how those two parts of you intertwine.
A lot of that actually stems from my training with Lloyd Williamson in New York, which is a physical training. It's his own technique, the Lloyd Williamson technique. And
okay.
He's still with us, and I thank him every day, because I'm a very physical actor, but I was a very physical actor with a lot of tension.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Tight in your
Yeah,
body.
yeah. And what Lloyd does is there's relaxation through the when we do these what he calls standing variations, there's structure and then there's the free form. So there's points in the class where you're doing structured things, like the first standing variation, which I still do before every show. Right? And then we'll have a free form period where this amazing pianist would just play and we would just move around the room.
Okay.
But that was the training, but what he really did was just allow me to use my physicality, but in a relaxed way that will also let the vulnerability come through. But I think, yeah, and I did some stunts in a film recently, I got certified for stage combat. I did outdoor dramas where I was riding horse bareback.
Oh, wow.
Flame arrows, jumping up and down, all kinds of fighting, throwing torches, ladder attacks against walls. And yeah, so I think I'm not a big guy. I mean, that was, even when I was playing football, I was like 5'10", 134. Going against these 250-pound linemen.
Yeah.
And I could take a hit, but I was never a hitter. But you could free me in a hamburger drill, and that's where, you've got dummies and you got a lineman and you give them the ball and basically they tackle you, and I could take the hit, but I just wasn't a hitter myself. But I think that physicality work it just, a lot of the roles I've done, especially like in the outdoor drama, riding horse bareback, and and that all works out and pays out.
Yeah, the athleticism was transformed into expressiveness.
Yeah.
The body tells the story as much as the brain or the voice.
I say as an actor, people, you have your body, you have your voice, and you have your imagination. All three of those things. And I read this article about this guy that was 72 and he did 72 push-ups every day of his life. He did a push-up for every year of his life.
So it gets harder as you get older.
It does. And you don't have to do them in a row. I'm still doing them in a row. I drop down and give me 66, Sunday will be 67. So,
Your birthday Sunday?
Yeah, it is closing.
My goodness. So what is that? April
7th.
7th? My birthday is April 15th.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize. You mentioned getting married to your wife, Carolyn, and Spider-Man and all that good stuff. And I did want to ask, because Carolyn is also an actor, a career actor. And I believe you've shared the stage with her multiple times. And I'm curious about, in terms of telling a clear story, I mean, can it get in the way? Does it create more chemistry? Have you been romantic leads together? Does it nice to be able to travel together? Is it, there's so many things that could go right or wrong working with your spouse in this career.
Yeah, no, actually I met Carolyn doing reading. I was coming off a relationship with a woman I loved, thought I was going to marry, didn't happen. And I was in that.
And Carolyn picked up the pieces.
Wow. We didn't get married for like 3 years, And there was at one point too where she said, when it gets too hot in the kitchen, because I really thought this was the woman I was going to marry. She's like, when it gets too hot in the kitchen, I'll get out. And we did at one point. But then we got back. But we were doing this reading and we're sitting across from each other and we're love interest in the show. And I'm like, is she a good actor or is there something maybe more? So we went out for coffee. Next thing you know, it's down the two of us and Glass Menagerie, the film, Paul Newman was in town in New York. And so we thought, well, let's just go see this movie. And they were sold out at the plaza. So we're like, well, look at the newspaper then, because there's no internet at that point. So it's like, well, let's walk to this other theater. And their showing didn't start. They were between shows or something. So we ended up getting coffee and sitting and talking, and it snowed and kind of romantic.
Oh, yeah.
And then I didn't call her for a week, and she called me back. She gets like, and she got, I never give a guy my number. I gave him my number. You didn't call. But for our wedding, I gave her that piece of paper with my number on.
Oh, my goodness.
Came full circle.
David
but as far as working together, we've done about 16 plays together.
Wow.
Yeah, she was more the musical performer.
Okay.
So she did more the musical track. I was doing more straight stuff, but then we kind of merged. Actually, we got to play George and Mary Daly in It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, my goodness.
The musical version of that, which was great fun. It's always worked in our favor. We just did a play last spring at Centenary Stage, a new play above the world, and it was called And We Were Husband and Wife Who Had Marital Problems. They go on to Central America, and they were staying at this friend's, what they thought was going to be a nice cabin was really the shack with no windows and everything else. And on the property was this mound, which turns out to be supernatural. And these archaeologists discover it, and all hell gets let loose. But it was actually kind of but that was the last play we've done together.
Okay.
But we've done,
16.
And as most artistic directors will say, if we can house you together,
it saves them money.
Yeah. And we actually we did our time that way up at Connecticut Rep. We both went into the EPA, which is an equity principal edition, and we were one after the other. And Carolyn went in and did her thing, and she said, and now my husband's going to come in. And he said that was really smart, to come in, to know I could house you together. And, and so we played, she was Mrs. Webb and I was Dr. Gibbs. We weren't opposite each other, but we were in the same show. Yes, it's better. I mean, we've been married 33 years, I guess, this year, and but probably at least half of that's been apart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right now we're sitting in actor housing.
Yeah.
You're here in Sarasota, Florida, performing at West Coast Black Theater Troupe. And you even just said 33 years married, 16 years of those apart.
Yeah.
Which means you're in a house that is not your house.
Yeah.
You're in a bed that is not your bed.
Yeah.
And you even just came off, I think, a tour of Frost Nixon.
Well, that was, it was maybe 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Okay. But even so,
that was
touring life,
yeah.
where it's not even where you're in actor housing for 2 months, but you're in a different bed every 2 nights or so.
Well, these are like 1, 2, or 3 week stands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about what it takes in your mindset, in your preparation, in your personal process. How do you create under circumstances like that, where the only constant is that your bed is changing all the time?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, but it's also the lifestyle. I mean, it's something if I was not married to an actor, I don't think I would have be married for 33 years.
Wow.
In fact, we got married, and that Thanksgiving, we were down in Tennessee. We went into Clarence Brown just to do a meet and greet with the theater. And Carolyn had actually gone to grad school there, done plays there. And she auditioned. They were like gabbing away and having a good time. And I was like, oh, this one, I'll do mine now. And I did mine, and he ended up casting me as Cowboy, and I'm not Rappaport. So we get married in September. January, I'm flying down to her hometown in Knoxville, Tennessee, having Sunday dinner with her folks while she's just
back in New York.
Jersey.
Oh, no.
So it was, not too many newly grads would have probably gone along with that.
But she got it as a fellow actor. She got it.
And she's happy when I get it, and I'm happy when she gets it.
Yeah.
We're getting older now. The work's a little further apart. But her mom had a stroke about a year and a half ago, so she's taking sort of a backseat to that, but her mom's doing better now. And so I'm like, she actually did a reading up in New York, and she's like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I said, just do it. And it's like, oh, it's so much work. And that's like, and of course she did it. And she's like, oh, so glad.
I want to swing back a little bit to the idea of the athletic nature of what you do and marathoner. One of the times we got to work together was on the Things They Carried, which is a one-man show. It's an adaptation of a novel. It's a Vietnam story, multiple characters, multiple settings, incredibly emotionally challenging. And it's all on you.
You came in to pitch.
Right. We had some things where I had to come in and just help with tech and just make sure you got to opening.
Yeah.
But talk about, is that the only one-man show you've done?
I actually did Underneath the Lint.
Oh, you've done that one too.
That was my first one, which is about the Dutch librarian
who
basically goes on a worldwide quest to find the culprit for a book that is 115 years overdue. That was left in the overnight book deposit. This guy's never left Hofdorf, Holland.
What a great setup.
It goes around the world, and it becomes the tale of wandering Jew, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. He goes to China, and there's like a tag and a coat, from a dry cleaner. And so this man who's never left Holland travels the whole world.
Finding the overdue fees.
Yeah, finding the culprit. Yeah.
But again, you were the only performer on stage.
Yeah.
Talk about when you're an actor in a play with other actors, you can feed each other, you can bounce off each other. But in a one-man show, oh my goodness. Talk about the difference in mindset, the difference in your process. Do you prepare different? Do you rehearse it? Like, what does it mean to lift that by yourself?
Yeah. I was taught in grad school, you have to live your life so that you're at the top of your game when that curtain goes up. Everybody else in the world is coming down at 8 o'clock. You have to be the top of your game. So whether I'm in a one-man show or I'm doing Ruby, I'm taking a nap in the afternoon. I work out, it's going to be in the morning,
Yeah.
and I don't live like a monk, but, I don't stay up late. I don't party a lot, and just, again, you have your body, your voice, and your imagination. You have to take care of those things. I mean, the prep for the things they carried was, they paid me a week to get off book, which I was when I got here, which that's, but that's pretty standard for me now. Anything, I'd like to be off book.
Yeah.
I was doing Harvey, and the guy playing Dowd came in off book at the read through. Like very early in my career.
That imprinted on you.
That I was like, and so there was like no question that you were going to be off book after you blocked that scene. You were going to be ready to go to play. And I know I've met other actors, and I've worked with other actors. Like one actor carried the run through in the afternoon before we opened.
Wow.
He was fine opening night.
Wow.
It's just his process. I want to go to that book as soon as I can.
Yeah.
It's like when I was taught in improv class in grad school, it was like, the different levels. What was it called? The different levels of in learning, I guess. Learning the words, but then being frustrated. When you know the words, you're frustrated by the words because you have to say those words. Kind of thing. Something.
It starts out by feeling limiting until it becomes freeing.
Yeah. Again, that limiting and freeing kind of thing. But yeah, I want to get off book as soon as I can because this is where it's going to happen in the relationship. I mean, yes, you do all your, like for things they carried, interviewed, veterans. They actually brought in a guy who really was incredible.
Scott,
yeah.
man. Yep.
And I did it again. I did it twice more. I did it up in DC as part of a one-man show festival. And then I did it in New Jersey. And there was a Vietnam veteran I met, his daughter, doing another reading up there. And he's like, "Oh, let me know when you're doing it, And when push came to shove, when I was doing it, and he was going to actually come and do part of a talk back, he wrote me and said,
Too much.
Yeah. I can't do this. No, sorry. And I said, hey, I totally understand.
Yeah. No judgment.
It's weird because I was not in Vietnam, and yet minimal, but I saw Platoon, and I just remember being so disoriented in those scenes in the night missions they're out on. And there's just something about that story that when I was auditioning, I was like, and they kind of, I think originally maybe the guy who wrote it was going to do it. And then, Kate offered it to me, and I was thrilled because I knew this was a story I could tell. And I'd still like to tell it. Yeah. I think it's an amazing book. I mean, I don't know, it's like top 10 in the Amazon list or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's a book that soldiers still carry in their rucksacks today.
Yeah.
And it's also being banned in high schools as we speak.
Yeah. We could take another really hard left turn if we wanted to. I'm with you, man.
But I mean, Tim O'Brien and Jen's adaptation is just really wonderful. He's done it many times himself. But like I say, the different characters, and for that one, the book doesn't really tell you, who these guys are. You just know. And I assigned, one guy was a Midwestern farmer, one was, the Puerto Rican street kid, one was, Kyle, of course, was the Native American, and another production would do something completely different. But there's moments that in that just will always stay with me.
Yeah.
Even with the people, eating a hamburger.
Yeah, you did that in a pretty small space. Couple, just because I did some reading on you before I came in. I knew you, but I didn't know you. And so I have a couple quick hits that I'm curious about. Why did they give you the key to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas?
That's RoboCop.
That's RoboCop. So this was back in your Spider-Man days, similar thing.
Well, actually, what happened was Spider-Man balloon is going to be the Macy's Day Parade. So there's no Spider-Man on the float. And they had 12 superheroes on the float.
So really quick side note. This is fascinating in terms of the intense conceptualization that the Marvel people are doing. Because Spider-Man is the balloon, right. We can't have a Spider-Man on the float. When Tobey Maguire came out, we had to create a story for why you in the Toys R Us do not sound like Tobey Maguire. I mean, that is a level of kind of precision and myth making that is fascinating. I had never thought of it that way. Yeah. But so because the balloon was Spider-Man,
So they asked all come down and try out, and I was going to be Iron Man, but mine was an inch taller, so he got it. So I wasn't going to be in it. And at the last minute, RoboCop was part of the Marvel universe, and Orion Pictures had the costume, and they said they let Marvel use the costume on the float.
Wow.
And I had not seen RoboCop at this point yet either.
Pretty violent.
Yeah, the film had just come out. But of all these, Iron Man and Hulk and Thing and Magneto and everybody on Captain America on the float, RoboCop, all the way down. So they had a guy who was doing personal appearances for them, for Orion Pictures. This guy apparently didn't like it or just didn't do it, and quit. So they said, we'd like to meet the guy who wore the costume and the float. And I worked for him for the next 10 years.
Wow.
And I did an anti-drug program with the FBI and the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I was the national spokesman for their Smart Moves program, which is their in-house teen pregnancy, drug prevention, alcohol, peer mentoring program. And not so funny little story, but the day before we were supposed to go to Pittsburgh, which was our first stop, I did an interview with NPR as
RoboCop.
Yeah. Now this turned out to be not so good because someone named Howard Stern got a hold.
Oh no!
Before it even aired.
Whoa!
And spoofed it.
Oh no!
And it almost killed the tour. But they said we just won't do any more radio. So, but Howard Stern. I was like, thank you very much, Mr. Stern. But he was like, because because I guess NPR, they kind of modified the voice. And it's like, I just remember hearing glimpses of it, but I was like, so anyhow, the tour does happen.
Yes.
We go to Little Rock, and I got the key to the city. I've got this wall at home called the Wall of Fame and Shame. And it's the key to the city. It's photos from productions. It's certificates. That's like when I did In the Belly of the Beast, I got the best actor from Sarasota magazine. That's up there, and all different kinds of things. And the other thing I got is something called the Arkansas Traveler Award, which is given by, at that time, Mr. Clinton.
Oh, wow. He was governor then. Okay.
And, or at least I have a framed copy of Bill Clinton's signature being an Arkansas Traveler, which is basically an ambassador for the state of Arkansas.
Okay.
Also, part of that, the FBI made me Man of the Year. They gave me a nice little plaque, and so it was kind of fun.
RoboCop served you well.
Yeah, and that was a costume not so form-fitting. 55 pounds of fiberglass.
Holy moly!
Wore a lycra bodysuit. There was a foam bodysuit, and then 55 pounds of fiberglass, and all you saw of me was the chin.
Yeah.
Which Peter Weller and I, oddly enough, have a similar. And I got to choke Regis Philbin in his TV show.
Yes, I did see that too. I was going to ask you about this. So RoboCop had to choke Rebus.
Well, he didn't have to, but I'm in the green room. Peter Weller didn't really want to do promotions after in the costume.
Yes.
He was coming on out of costume to promote Robo 2. But they had me come on as RoboCop in the costume like a couple days before he came out.
So did you malfunction or?
Well, they had this, and they had this wall that dropped, and I walked out and they did the same with Peter Weller, And so I'm in the green room before I go on, and said, "Does Regis like to play?" He goes, "Oh, he loves that stuff." And I said, "Well, ask him if I can give him any advice." And we were out there, they were sitting in their stools, and Regis is going away, and we talked about the drug tour a little bit, that the film coming out, and he goes, "Oh, RoboCop, do you have any advice for me?" And I go, "Stay out of trouble." I don't know that made his highlight reel.
Right.
He retired, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness.
To see again,
Next random question, because this is a big part of your particular storytelling brand, David. When did you first know that one of your superpowers was growing facial hair?
Wow.
I have seen you with so many
You're right. Yeah.
loud, huge, different, specific facial hair patterns.
Yeah. No, actually, when I was doing The Tempest on a national tour in grad school, I grew one for the first time. I was Stefano, and it came pretty full. I was like, I guess I had, pretty, but then I didn't grow a beard for a long time. But then I was doing the Butler, really, because I thought I just have a beard. And they're like, no, actually, Carrie actually has the mutton chops, the friendly mutton chops. And I was like, really? I don't know. but it became a trademark,
Yeah.
and it's really was right. And the director, Joe, was absolutely correct in asking me to do that. And then when I did Touch the Poet at Irish Rep, I grew it out. And then COVID hit, and I just kept it. And so it just got longer.
It sure did.
And it just opened doors. I mean, I was getting...
It opened doors for you. So it created a whole different look.
As I am, a bald guy, older guy, middle-aged guy, there's a lot of us like this. But I discovered that with a beard, especially a long beard, I was, one of, 10 or 15 guys going for audition versus one of 50 guys going in for audition.
Oh, how interesting is that?
Yeah. And it's really, it opened doors. I did the Little America, the Apple TV Plus series. I got that. It was a silent yoga retreat, and I think it's episode 6. But I had the beard, and I got to play a Yiddish King Lear, spouting Yiddish when they were clearing out the Polish ghettos. I was there going in my long underwear, and again the beard, because I went into audition and they're like, and it was in Yiddish. They wanted you to say it in Yiddish, and I could read it, but I wasn't really that primed to really just to do it. Well, just throw away the paper and just do a miser thing with it, And so I thought there's no way in hell I'm going to get this audition. And I got the call.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my, I got to really learn this. Thankfully, it was never like a really close-up shot. It was just this really long cable shot that came in through the crowd. And I was just one of the people going, "Boo!"
Yeah.
And the night before we're doing it, this guy calls him, oh, I'm your dialect coach. And I'd already gotten, because there was a Yiddish Yiddish fiddler going on in New York. So I asked some buddies to help me with it, and they did. And I was pretty good, but he had some different pronunciations, but he said, okay, well, since you worked on it, you could do yours,
Cool.
And we did like 26 takes that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the facial hair, because my superpower isn't quite as well developed as yours, but I can grow facial hair. In terms of like when you get cast and you have to make a facial hair choice, is that something that usually you make a suggestion? Does the director ask you to grow something? Does the costumer weigh in? I'm just curious that facial hair is a storytelling tool.
Absolutely.
Right? It is a physical manifestation of something in the character. So people who can grow that in various ways. I mean, I've seen that on resumes when I'm a director. Can grow this, can grow that. Some people can't grow a full mustache, right? So when it comes to choosing that particular mask.
Yeah, I think it depends on the role. I knew for Irish Rep, I wanted to have it. I had it when I did Beyond the Horizon, which was my first Irish Rep show. Most times, probably in the last 10 years, I think I've been mostly with facial hair. And that's why it's kind of hard for me for my reel. Almost all the stuff is facial hair. And it's like, okay, I really need to have something that doesn't have. In fact, I've got like two things in the can, one without facial hair, which is really kind of neat. It's called Vienna 1913, and it's Freud and Hitler.
Oh.
In 1913, when he was still an failing art student.
Yeah.
Freud. And I just really love his scene with Hitler. But unfortunately, the times right now, they are changing, and Hitler's not in vogue right now. So the independent film is not getting.
I am not. So I'm not going to title this episode "Hitler's Not in Vogue Anymore," but that's a really good line. Oh my gosh!
But then I've got another film where I'm the tatted Nazi, and that I checked my IMDb because sometimes they'll sneak something.
Right.
And they hadn't listed it yet, and I was like, I thought they would, because we shot that during COVID, so I figured that it's kind of a fun movie, but I had this great fight that I got to do as the tatted Nazi.
So you just mentioned Colonel Carey, Lieutenant Carey.
It's Colonel.
I directed the play. I remember. I directed the play. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, Joe Dishery, who I worked with in St. Louis, you did it before we did it. But I saw, again, it was either a shot or a video of your dressing room space for Butler.
Mm-hmm.
There was a photograph on your mirror.
Oh yeah.
Of what looked like a Confederate soldier. That was the person, the historical figure that you were.
Carey,
yeah. Major. Thank you. Okay, that was going to bug me all day. Thank you. So Major Carey's portrait is hanging on your mirror.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what that is in terms of your process as an actor, storyteller. Why is his fate? And you're playing a historical character, but was it to help you with makeup and facial hair? Was it a way to meditate, to get into his mindset? You put that there. It was the only thing on your mirror. The only thing.
Yeah.
Why was that the only thing on your mirror?
I think, I know some actors, like I was doing a Mice and Men down at Virginia Stage, and the woman playing Cherry had this whole wall in her apartment of, magazines, pictures she'd cut out and everything like that. And it's not something I always do, but I think especially with the historical character, even with the Judge Hal Adams I'm playing now, because you get a lot. I mean, I went up to the Ringling Museum, and actors always talk about, looking at paintings, for periods to get postures and
Mhm.
things. And I was looking at paintings like, yeah, I can really see how, because I hadn't really been up to the Ringling Museum, and that, especially that medieval
Yeah.
1500s on the right side as you go up, was just, but you really, you look at the eyes, and you look at, try to see the soul, I think, of the person. And I think that really, can open doors. Or I mean, another thing in grad school is always taught, there's a why of a character.
Mm.
There's you coming down the one way, and there's the character coming down the other, and it's the intersection that we're going for.
Mm.
And sometimes that why can be a real long
Yeah.
thing, and sometimes can be really short if you're playing close to the bone. And I think a tool like that just, shortens that why a little bit.
David, great. I love to wrap these episodes up with a couple questions on advice and a nice spotlight for you. So here we go. So the first question, I know, you're prepped, you're primed, you're so ready. What is the best advice that you have ever taken?
There's from the play Sideman, and Gene says, you keep your nuts small, you get to play your horn. And that's pretty much been my life. I say I live in an old car. I have an old car. I live in an old house, and I have an old wife. And she says the same thing. But it's true. Like I say, we have pensions and some money put away. We have a house. So those things. But we, I maybe growing up with six brothers. I was a school teacher.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot. We never starved. But we were buying our own clothes. I had paper routes, shoveled walks, and mowed lawns, and mom and dad would borrow money from me.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes they say, I became like a family bank. I mean, not a lot, but I remember, if we went on payday, before we went to the grocery store, we might go to Burger King, and that would be our treat, for the week. So I grew up frugally. I think Carolyn and I are both more conservative fiscally, but that when I heard that line, you keep your nuts small, you get to play your horn.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense because, there's people that, and I was just talking to Ben, who's going to move to New York, and I've done this kind of thing. This is how I learned. I was doing 1776 at the Fulton Opera House, just graduated high school. Patrick Hines came down from New York to play Ben Franklin in 1776. He's an equity actor, Broadway film, everything. And I would sit in his dressing room and I'd say, gee, Mr. Hines, tell me about being an actor. And he would.
Wow.
And I just, paying it forward, whatever you want to call it. I've spoken to classes, interns, and I would say it's the beginning of that conversation. And Ben was talking about it, and I was saying that, he's coming up, and I said, you got to go to New York with all those balloons in the air, because New York's going to start popping.
Yeah.
Once you get up there. And I said, it's easy. You get in, you start working in a bar, you work till 2:00 in the morning, you maybe stay for a drink afterwards. How many mornings are you going to get up at 6 a.m. to meet that EPA?
Yeah, to go get in line.
And if, so you have to keep your nuts small, and then you get to play horns. That's the advice I take and pass on. And I don't think it's been bad.
Speaking of,
yes.
What is the worst advice that you've ever given?
I was thinking about this, and I think there's always a disclaimer before I say anything.
Okay.
That I say, this worked for me.
Great.
May not
Yes.
work for you.
Of course.
So I probably gave advice that somebody failed or followed and said, why didn't you even tell me that?
Yeah.
You don't know a specific, but I always do the disclaimer first.
Right.
This is what worked for me. And things have changed so much. I just tell Ben, I was like, man, going to New York now, I thought it was hard when we were there, but it's just, it's really tough. There's just so many more people, so many more grad programs coming out.
Yeah.
Just such an influx of people, But, if you can find your way, you just got to, I said to Ben, you don't be afraid to ask. for help because everybody else slept on somebody's couch. When I was taking acting class with Phil Gushy, he told the story that Tom Cruise was couch surfing when he was in his acting class. And he would always sleep in the back of the class. It didn't take him long, but he would literally be, couch surfing. So we've all done that. And, people want to help.
Yeah.
Because, that's how you can do it. You need to help. Get by with a little help from your friends.
Yeah. Is Ben in the play with you right now?
Yeah, Ben's playing the sheriff.
Okay, great. I just wanted...
Yeah, and he was an intern at FST last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he actually did Soldier's play as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he's thinking of moving up, making the big jump, So it's like, I mean, do you have to go to New York? I don't think you do anymore. I mean, there's so much work in Atlanta and
it's way more spread out now.
When I had school, Chicago was a hotbed now. As far as spotlighting,
so
Ruby closes on Sunday.
Yeah, your show closes Sunday, but the spotlight is tell people who are listening, like if they want to learn more about David or what else you have coming up, or they can...
My website, www.davidsittler.com, needs to be updated. As most websites. But no, see you at theater.
And I also know you do have some film work. Was there one?
Yeah, there's some Blue Lights in the can, Vienna 1913's in the can. I did a web series called a short tutorial where it's really kind of neat. I'm playing a dad whose daughter has come back to live with me because I'm beginning Alzheimer's. And we did 2 episodes so far during COVID, and hopefully we're going to shoot some more of those. I actually had the beard for that too, which now I don't. So it's like,
it's to grow it back out real quick. Oh, David, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all these wonderful stories. And if we don't see you on stage or screen, we might see you slinging between buildings.
So far, they hung the suit up.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
The Page and Stage podcast is built with Alitu, the all-in-one podcasting app created by the amazing team over at thepodcasthost.com. You can learn more about all my guests and access their websites and projects in the episode summaries. If you enjoyed and found value in this podcast, please tell at least one other person. Word of mouth has always been and will always be the best marketing tool in the world. Thank you for listening, and until next time, I'm Jason Cannon, and I cannot wait to hear your story.